And at this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker this morning, Brother Tom Moen, who is going to speak to us on that very theme, faithfulness. Brother Tom.
Thank you for that good steady hand. Russ is someone you can always trust in. And he could get it done. In the Bible, who are the people in the Bible that you think of that are faithful, true to God in every sense of the word? Who are some of the most faithful people you can think of in the Bible? Abraham? Who was faithful? Job? Moses. Who else?
Elijah.
But they made mistake.
They did, yes.
David.
Noah. What about Daniel? Daniel. Even Jesus referred to him as the prophet Daniel. And Jesus didn't use the word prophet very often when he spoke. But Daniel, he was faithful in the little things. And as Jesus would say, he who is faithful in the little things is faithful in the big things. Daniel, he was a teenage boy living in Jerusalem. He was part of the royal family. And he was made captive by King Nebuchadnezzar when he knocked down Jerusalem. And it says here, that the young men were taken. There was no blemish. They were good looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king was going to make them a grand welcome. They weren't just going to eat. They were being given deluxe meals, which were considered the best meals in Babylon, with the king's fine wine right from the king's table. They were to eat. But Daniel, it says in the Bible, he purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself, that he would be faithful to God. That's the key. He purposed in his heart. How important is that? Very important. And in our life, we purpose in our heart what we want to accomplish. And so Daniel and his 3 friends that were there purposed in their heart that they would not eat the king's food or drink the king's food. What was wrong with the king's food? Too rich? What else?
Probably had pork.
Probably, it probably did. It was, certainly wasn't kosher. And Daniel was kosher his whole life. Daniel was faithful in the small things. Yet he had to undergo some things in traveling to Babylon. What's the first thing they did to the captives, the young men that they brought over? What did they do?
Right.
Well, the young men did, but what did the Babylonians do to them? Changed their names and made them eunuchs. Doesn't that sound fun? No. They were going to be servants of the king, period. They were not going to have wives. They were not going to have families. Their attention was going to be on the king's business only. And when they went to the chief of the eunuchs and said, "We want you to give us vegetables," and instead of that rich wine the king has, we want to drink water. We want to eat vegetables and drink water. And the prince of the eunuchs, he was scared about that, because back in those days, people thought the best of the land is the meat. The best of the land is the wine. The best of the land is this and that and the other thing. And reminds me of Mr. Woolworth. You heard of him? He built a great big store that was around for years. And he had a famous saying. He says, "Now that I'm rich enough to eat anything I want, my health won't permit it." But these men were young. They had the best of their life ahead of them. And what did the chief of the eunuchs think when they asked to eat vegetables and drink water and forego the king's wine and forego the king's meat? His first thing, who did he think about first?
Thought about his own life.
Yes, he thought if these guys get skinny and worn out and they're not productive, they're gonna let me have it. I don't know if they do that anymore, but when I was a boy, if things were in big trouble, we went like that. Let people know it was going to be big trouble. Well, Daniel and his 4 friends, they prayed. And when the prince of the eunuchs challenged them, they knew what to say. What did they tell him? What did they tell him?
They wanted him to just give him a little time and see what would happen.
Try it for 10 days. And if you see we're going downhill, we'll do as you say. But if our God takes care of us and we do well, and so after 10 days, the prince of the eunuchs went and examined them. And all those captives that were eating the king's rich food and everything, they weren't doing so well because they weren't used to eating like that. And he proclaimed that they were 10 times better than all the rest. That's no small thing, is it?
No.
Yes, I remember in school, there were other kids that I'm sure were 10 times smarter than I was, and it showed. It showed. Daniel and his friends, there they were. They were allowed to be faithful to God. And they were undergoing 3 years of training. The University of Babylon. And they were learning. What are some things that were invented in Babylon that you can think of, that you may know of? Bronze? Well, I'm sure they did a lot with bronze, but one thing was money. They used money as a means of trade rather than just a straight barter. Yea many bushels of wheat for yea many cows. They reduced it to a trade of value that was acceptable everywhere. And you know, if you're going to trade for cows, it's a lot easier to take money to buy the cows or to sell the cows. You can still do the barter, but it's a lot easier. So money was really started there in Babylon, the exchange. Yes, they had gold and things, but Babylon, they put that money on paper, and it was an exchange. What else was really developed in Babylon that you can think of? Cities, yes, the city of Babylon. But there have been cities. But in Babylon, they started something called algebra. Have you ever heard of algebra?
Yes.
Yeah. You tried not. Well, that's where it came from, was Babylon. They had a lot of advanced things. They had something spectacular there in Babylon. There weren't a lot of natural resources in Babylon. You had the desert sands. It was about the same climate as we have here. But they had the Euphrates River coming through, and it had a lot of water. And they developed canals. They dug ditches and ran water through them to go out to the farmers, and they really developed irrigation. We do a lot of irrigation here. I spent part of my teenage years in Idaho, where they grow famous potatoes, russet Burbank potatoes, that were developed by Luther Burbank. And it's a big story about those potatoes. They weren't supposed to be. But he was very fond of working with things, and in the potato harvest, he found a plant that had potato seeds on it, and he wanted to find out about these. Now, those of you that know anything about potatoes, how often do they plant potato seeds? Hardly ever. Hardly ever. They take the potatoes and they make sure there's an eye on the potato, and they plant that. And that way you get the same potatoes. But if you plant potato seeds, you don't know what you're going to get. In this case, he planted the potato seeds, and most of them were crummy. But one of them was that nice, perfect, russet potato that we call Baker's. And most any restaurant, you're going to see those nice Baker's potatoes that Mr. Burbank developed. And we still eat them. When's the last time you had one of those nice Burbank potatoes? Nice russets. Yeah. Like anything else, they're good for fighting over. The Washington State potato farmers started an ad. And they were sued by the Idaho potato growers because in those ads they were saying, Washington grows better Idaho potatoes than Idaho does. And that was fighting words. So Idaho's very proud of it. Every Idaho license plate says famous potatoes. What crop does Washington brag about?
Coffee, apples, cherry.
Apples. Yes. Are there any better apples than Washington apples? No, I don't think so. That was my family's business in Washington. They grew apples, apple orchards. If you remember my Aunt Violet here, it was Washington apples that put her way through academy and through Walla Walla College. Her dad was an apple grower. And he started out working in other people's orchards. And little by little, he developed his own. And he made himself a fortune with apples. And her father even had a patent on apples. A red delicious apple called the Top Red. And for 30 years, about 33 years, that was the best-selling apple in the United States of America. So I think he sold a few, and he left that apple patent to an organization I know well. It belongs to the Upper Columbia Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. He left it to them. And I'm sure that the Upper Columbia Conference is making a nice fortune on that. And it's being used in the ministry of the gospel of Christ. I think that's a good thing. Aunt Violet's father was faithful. And he let her know as much as he had. He says, when I pass, I'm going to give you $50,000 and everything else is going to the conference office. And while I consider that a lot of money, it's not very much compared to apple patent and all the money that comes in on that. He loved the Lord. How much do we love the Lord? How much did Daniel love the Lord? For Daniel, it was so important, he told the Lord, purposed in his heart to be faithful. To be faithful. And that was important to God. How important is it to you if you have, say 10 friends and one of them is always faithful and 9 of them are faithful when they want to be? Who's the most important friend to you? The faithful one that's always doing the right thing for you and by you. as I said in Daniel 1 verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested. I told you that part. He purposed in his heart. If you have your mind made up, how easy is it for someone to change your mind?
It's not easy.
Brother Russ, you worked for the railroad for many years, and you knew how the railroad was supposed to be run. If someone wanted it to be run differently, was it easy to convince you?
No,
No.
there are tried and true ways, and we did have what we call terminal management information meetings.
Yes.
And people came up with ideas, and then those ideas were discussed. Some of them weren't worth even repeating, but no, it's something you don't change, just like the gauge of the track
Yes.
or whatever. It's go with tried and true.
Well, that's what Daniel did. He was going to serve God in the way God wanted to be served. And how often does God change his mind?
Never, usually.
That's right. That's right. The same yesterday, today, and forever. Didn't just settle it tomorrow. It was
Give second chance.
forever. God would give a second chance, yes, but God knew where their heart was.
Yes.
And some people, God just said they're not worth anything. Just, they're gone. They're gone. Wipe them out, bury them, and take over the land. Daniel knew where he was going. The children of Israel, Daniel's family, had failed the Lord. But they had instilled in Daniel that faithfulness to God. He was trained in a way he should go. And some people didn't like Daniel. Some people didn't care for Daniel at all. And
The soothsayers and the nations, I'm sure they didn't like him, they were not
that's right. And he became the head man in the kingdom, just second only to the king. And later on in life, after the administration had changed and Darius was the king, he had seen everybody, and he picked Daniel to run things in the kingdom, even above those who had grown up in the kingdom that were there. He trusted Daniel's loyalty. And yet Daniel had some people that really hated him because they couldn't find anything wrong with him. They were checking the books and they found that under Daniel they were faithful. And these people did not like Daniel in charge because they wanted to make some money off the kingdom. What's the use in working for the government if you can't help yourself? I mean, we hear about that all the time. we hear about that. We, just this week, a deputy sheriff was arrested. For what? Stealing cars and selling them. He knew what to look for, but he outsmarted himself. He got casual. And now he's sitting in jail, and he sent a lot of people there. You know, if you're looking for car thieves, are you going to be looking for a deputy sheriff very quickly? No. No. But you will get caught up with. And what happened to Daniel when those people that didn't like him, they decided that they were going to flatter King Darius? And they took a proposed law. And the Medes and the Persians, once something is law, can you change it?
No.
No! It had to stand. And so they brought a law before King Darius that said that for 30 days, people could only worship the king and could only pray to the king. And if they prayed to any other deity, they were going to be thrown into the den of lions. And how often did those lions eat? Yes. And only when a prisoner was thrown to them. And so when they brought that, the king was flattered. But then when they came and accused Daniel, the king knew. Oh, they did this to get Daniel. And King Darius studied all day about how he could get out of this. And they kept reminding him, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, you have to do it, king. You have to do it. So, about sunset, he told Daniel, your God surely will save you. You have been so faithful. Surely he will be faithful to you. And so overnight, Daniel sat in the den of lions. And according to Daniel's testimony, the angel of the Lord shut the mouths of the lions. They didn't know what to do. But I'm sure there were some guardian angels with Daniel. And those angels were a good protection, a sure protection. And the angels were pretty fierce. And the lions had nothing to do with them. And in the morning, the king came down. He stayed up all night. And I don't think he was praying to himself. I think he was praying to Daniel's God. And the king came and he says, Daniel, servant of the Most High God, are you hurt? O king, live forever. God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths. And I'm fine. And he ordered Daniel brought up. He followed the law. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. It wasn't the fault of the king that the lions did eat him up. That was the work of the angels. And so, when you think about how vindictive earthly kings are, once everything was fine and everyone was happy there that Daniel was saved, What was the king's order?
Throw the others into the lion's den themselves.
That's right. He took all those who plotted against Daniel and ordered them and their wives and their kids to be thrown into the lion's den. And before they hit the ground, the lions were up in the air eating on them. Eaten alive. Pretty terrible. They weren't so nice there. Daniel was faithful. And God appreciated that. Daniel lived to be an old man. And he remained faithful to God. So remember that when someone's tempting you to have a little bit of the wrong stuff or something. Be faithful. Daniel was. And it didn't hurt Daniel, did it? And his three friends were faithful too. So let's finish up with our hymn of dedication.